Alright, hello class. We are going to go through the Unit 11 Test Review 1 worksheet. The beginning of this worksheet is vocabulary, so let's take a look at this. It says write the, oops, let me see if I can get this up for you. Write the vocabulary word from the word bank in the box with the matching definition. Alright, so we got a word bank down here. You know what, let's just go ahead and read the actual description or definition, and then we'll see if we can match the words up with it. So this first one, y equals x minus h squared plus k. Well, clearly that's not anything with a circle because the y would be squared as well. So this must be a quadratic, and I think you recognize this as quadratic vertex form. So I'm going to write this. Actually, let me put this in a different color. This is, I'll just abbreviate, this is quadratic. A hard time writing tonight. Vertex form. Alright, the next one, x minus h squared plus, oh, this is interesting. Looks like there's a typo here. This should be x minus h squared plus, this should be y minus k squared equals r squared. Alright, this is obviously a circle because we have a squared x value and a squared y value. We have learned, class, this is called the standard form of a circle. So it is a circle standard form. I'll abbreviate standard. Circle standard form. Alright, next one, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Again, we have a squared x term and not a squared y term. So this is going to be a quadratic, and we've already used quadratic vertex form. This is actually quadratic standard form. So I will abbreviate this, quadratic standard form. Let's cross that out, and let's cross out the circle standard form. Alright, next one, x squared plus ax plus y squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We learned this is circle general form. So circle general form. So we got through the equations. Let's get through the next part. The name of the point used to create a parabola. Well, let's remember, class, we have a parabola, and parabolas are made with a point and a line. If every point on a parabola is the same distance from this point and this line, and this point is called the focus. Okay, next one, the distance from the center of the circle to a point on the circle. So the center of the circle to a point on the circle, that clearly from my diagram shows that it's a radius. Alright, let's see here, next one. The name of the line used to create a parabola. Well, look at our diagram. We have a point called the focus. This line is called the directrix. So this is the directrix. Let's see if our last one matches up. The measure from the parabola vertex to the focus. The measure of the parabola vertex from the parabola vertex to the focus. So looking at our diagram again, we learned the distance between the focus and the vertex is called the p-value. The p-value. And I was wondering why I was having another word here. We had already used radius, and we used p-value. So there we go. Vocabulary is done. Let's go to this next question. Question number 1. Directions say show your work. Round answers to 1 decimal place. Write the unit of measure when appropriate. That means if there's a unit of measure, please write it in your answer. And then circle your final answer. Alright, so first one. Y equals 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 7. That is a quadratic equation in vertex form. So our vertex is found with h and k. So our vertex is going to be at, okay, the h value we flip, that's 3 the k value, we keep the sign in a quadratic, and that's -7. There's our first answer. On this one, again, we ignore the a value. We found here's the h value, here's the k value. So we've got an h value of -5 because we flip the sign for h. We keep the sign for k, and our vertex is at -5, +8. Number 2, what is the p-value of this parabola? Well, we find p by using a, and p is equal to 1/4a. And since we know that a is 2, this is 1/4 times 2, and this is 1/8. Our p-value for this equation is 1/8. The next one, we have an a value of -1/8. So to find the p-value, p is equal to 1/4a. Let's write this out so we keep everything neat here. This is 1/4 times -1/8. I'm going to change the 4 to a fraction so you can see I'm multiplying two fractions across. The 1 is still by itself on top. 4 times 1, numerator times numerator. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 8, there's our denominators, that's 8. And then we have to carry the negative sign because this is a negative fraction times a positive fraction. Now in this case, we want to get rid of the fraction on the bottom. So to do that, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, -8/4. And if we multiply the bottom by the reciprocal, we have to multiply the top by the reciprocal. The good thing about multiplying the denominator by its reciprocal is those just change to 1. So we can get rid of that. There is no more denominator in this equation. And now we have 1 times -8/4. Well, 1 times anything just gives you that other thing back. The 1 does not change the answer. So the answer here is -8/4. And we can simplify that. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So our answer is -2. Alright, number 3. Find the center and radius of the circle. Alright, we can do that. Because we know the center is found at h and k, we know the center is going to be at h. We flip the sign when we pull it out of the equation, so that's +7. K value for a circle, we flip that as well because the equation has y minus k. So it's 7, -2. And then our radius is found by taking the value here, this constant, that's r squared. That means our radius is going to be the square root of 64, which happens to be 8, and we can put the units on the end there. This is a little hard to circle the answers. I'll circle the radius so you see it. I don't want to mess up my answer here, so I'm not going to circle the center. Okay, let's take a look at B. Same procedure. Everything's in the right order. We have x term, y term, and the constant on the right. So we've got our h and our k. That means our center is at h, which is -12. Flip the sign of h. K, we flip the sign of k for a circle. Got that. And now our radius. Remember, class, the 14 stands for r squared. That means our radius must be the square root of 14, and that is not a perfect square. And the way you figure that out, just to make sure you realize this, is you just try it out. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the square root of 14. And that's got a long decimal on the end, so I don't want to simplify. I'm going to leave my answer as the square root of 14 units. There is my radius. Alright, letter C. Oh, we got a problem. This is not written in the correct order. I've got to move the y squared over to the other side. Let's start off with our x value since we already have that. X minus 3 squared. That's on the correct side. The minus y squared has to come over to the left side. We're going to change it to positive because it's crossing the equal sign. And then the negative 49 needs to go on the other side. So that actually changes to positive 49. And now we've got things in the proper order. Here is our h value. We don't have a k value here. That means k is 0. And there's our radius. So let's go ahead and write our center. Our center is at positive 3, 0. And our radius is, since 49 stands for r squared, our radius is a square root of 49, which is actually a perfect square. That's 7 units. Okay, last one. Last one looks like it's in the proper order. X squared term, y squared term, 10's on the right. We do not have an h value because there's nothing being added or subtracted to the x value. So our center is at 0. Our k value is negative 8. And then our radius is going to be, since r squared equals 10, our radius is the square root of 10, and that's not a perfect square, so we'll leave it in a square root form. Alright, let's see. Let's do these next 3 and then we'll call it a video and we'll do the next one. Number 4, which way does the parabola open? Well, the direction of our parabola is based on the a value. A value here is positive 1/2. That means this parabola opens up. The a value for letter B is negative 3. That's a negative number. That means the parabola opens down. And for letter C, y equals negative 1/8. That's also our a value. So that one, the parabola also opens down because that is a negative a value. Alright, we'll finish this video. We'll start back up on question number 5.